Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we're reacting to Talladega, NASCAR's most feared track by Emplemon. One of my favorite YouTubers of all time. He makes some of these just most fantastic videos on YouTube about topics that. So the thing about I love about Emplemon particularly so much is that he'll make a video about a topic that you could not give less of a shit about before you see the video, right? You click on the video, by the end of it, you're so locked in, you're so invested in the topic, you start loving it, and it sometimes even extends to after the video, sometimes even after the video, you know, you'll still try to be kind of interested in the topic just because that Emplemon video got you so into it, because he does such a good job at explaining the story behind it, why it's interesting, and all of that, and just makes a really good storytelling throughout the video where there's certain moments that you actually get really emotional behind. But before the video, you could not give less of a shit about the topic. Now you're actually getting emotional about the topic in like 1 hour of learning about it, because he does such a good job at telling the story and building you up to know all the details and everything. So yeah, so one of those things that he did that was NASCAR. I've seen Emplemon's video on the Never Ever series video on Dale Earnhardt, and that's a fantastic video, and that got me into NASCAR a little bit. Not really outside of Emplemon's videos, but I really do like, I know the basics of, things now, and yeah, it got me really interested in the topic when Emplemon was discussing it. So I know he's a big fan of NASCAR. He has several videos, so I know he has more, so we're going to be going through those. I'm going to try to react to all the Emplemon videos that I haven't seen, which is only a very few. But yeah, this is the oldest one they haven't seen. Talladega, NASCAR's most feared track. It's an hour long, so sit back, grab some popcorn and stuff. And let's get into this, see why it's most feared track, see the storyline behind it and everything. And let's go. Obviously, go watch the original video first. Either have it on in the background or watch it beforehand. So Emplemon gets the view. Obviously, you should go subscribe to him. And subscribe to this channel as well. We're trying to get 2,000 subs. And if you like this video, like it, so let me know you want more Emplemon reactions. Suggest more videos in the comments, kind of similar to this, or maybe even not. But yeah, let's get into it.
Legend has it that the Muskogee Indians used to race horses at Dry Valley in what is now northern Alabama. The natives referred to the region as Talladega, or border town. Eventually, as American colonists began to settle the surrounding lands, the border of the Native American territory.
What I like about these videos he does about these topics is he always starts from the beginning. He always starts off in its inception, and then goes throughout the history of it and everything. So you really get a whole story here. So I really do like about Emplemon.
Gradually began to shrink. By 1813, Talladega had become a battleground as the Muskogee erupted in civil war. The Talladega natives remained loyal to the Americans and helped General Andrew Jackson defeat the Red Sticks, an opposing faction who were fighting to preserve the sovereignty of the Indian Territory. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson would repay the favor by ordering the removal of all indigenous tribes from the southern United States.
Yeah, pretty bad. Pretty bad guy, pretty bad event in U.S. history. The genocide of the Native Americans, arguably the most successful genocide in history. 99% of their population killed. Yeah, Andrew Jackson, one of the biggest proponents of it. And yeah, we still have him on like a $20 bill. I think he's getting removed, but yeah, that's insane that we had him. This guy that was straight up genocided an entire race of people, just on our money, for like hundreds of years.
By their compatriots and betrayed by their American allies, the Talladega Indians abandoned their ancestral lands, never to return. According to legend, as the tribe gazed over Dry Valley for the final time, the shaman cursed the land and all of its future intruders to be struck with misfortune.
It's always these sports curses, man. There's always these sports curses where someone cursed it, or something happened that caused everything that happens here to be cursed. And you see it with multiple sports, and I just find that so cool and so interesting when there's a whole backstory to it. Yeah, that's a fantastic origin story here for Talladega. That's a fantastic origin story, and we're gonna see the curse keep going through.
130 years later, the president of NASCAR is looking for a new site to construct his most ambitious racetrack yet. After failing to secure a venue in Raleigh or Greenville, Bill France set his sights on a secluded valley in northern Alabama. The town of Talladega was chosen as the location of NASCAR's biggest superspeedway, where, rather than horses, men would race 2-ton hunks of metal at triple-digit speeds. Bill France probably never knew about the curse. Hardly anyone did. But soon enough, in one way or another, all of NASCAR would learn to fear Talladega.
It's not gonna work. Here we go again, boys.
Ooh. The best documentaries on YouTube, or up there at least.
It's the big wreck on the final lap. New leader, been waiting all day to say this. It's Ricky Bobby.
And it's shaking Big Ten.
How did he get through all these cars?
2/1000ths of a second. Have you ever? Oh, man.
The inaugural running of a NASCAR race can be something truly special. The first Daytona 500 in 1959 immediately cemented the race as NASCAR's most prestigious event. NASCAR's first race at Indianapolis in 1994 was such a spectacle that it attracted more entrants than any other event in the history of the sport. Talladega's inaugural race was also a spectacle, but not for the right reasons.
Hey, I'm Slapshoes, and this is an abridged version of my video on what
1969 just feels like it was a core year in human history. Like, so much shit, it feels like it happened in 1969. Feels like it was a turning point in like all of human history.
is widely considered to
So
be
much
the
shit happened.
worst NASCAR race in history, which was the very first race ever held at Talladega. If you want
Pretty good start to your curse. Your first race is the worst race in the entire history.
all the nitty-gritty details, the link to the full video is in the description. To say that Talladega's very first event was controversial would be a massive understatement. It was unlike any other race ever held in NASCAR history, and for all the wrong reasons. First, the track was completed dangerously close to opening weekend by design. Bill France had gone into serious debt trying to build this place, and he needs his money back as soon as possible. In August, just a month before race day, Talladega holds its very first tests. And despite topping out at 195 miles per hour, the drivers showed concern very early on. Donnie Allison, a multi-time winner in NASCAR's top division, said, "The track is as rough as a cob. It'd be a beautiful track if it were smooth. The only way they're going to fix it is to repave it." Meanwhile, Kel Yarbrough noticed that his tires were shredded after just a dozen laps on the track. He also
Yeah, if there's one sport you don't want to go through with, even if the arena is all kind of messed up in the construction, it's, you know, the sport where you're driving at 200 miles, you're driving 200 mile per hour, 2-ton, 3-ton pieces of metal around, you know. I'd say that's a pretty not a good sport to keep going on, even if your stadium's messed up.
noted lots of bumps in the turns. Not exactly something you want to navigate when you're pushing 200 miles an hour in what passed for safety equipment back in the 1960s. NASCAR's two tire manufacturers, Goodyear and Firestone, take note of the tire wear and vow to come back with harder tires to compensate. The first open practice for all teams happens in September on the Wednesday just before the race on Sunday. And that tire issue is not resolved. Guys are noticing chunks of rubber coming off the tires after just a few laps.
Yeah, that's real bad.
Flying harder compounds on Thursday and Friday, but nothing works. Drivers are getting uppity, and by Friday, Firestone backs out, citing safety concerns. The drivers, who just mere weeks ago formed the Professional Drivers Association, a union-like organization, are talking openly of a potential walkout. And the president of the PDA, Richard Petty, the winningest NASCAR driver in history, is in some tense negotiations with Bill France. But the straw that broke the camel's back was one exchange between France and Bobby Allison, who won the most recent race just last week. France says to Bobby, quote, "I think you're just afraid to race." Bobby was taken aback, but it was the quiet Leroy Yarbrough who stepped up from behind him and swung and hit Bill France in the face, knocking him to the
shit.
ground. Leroy then calmly said to everybody watching,
That's some
"Boys,
balls.
pack up your stuff. We're leaving." And just
Can you imagine if some shit like this happened today, like in the NBA? Just Adam Silver makes this like horribly dangerous court or something, and they're trying to make the players play in it, and then fucking LeBron just punches him in the face or something, like after Adam Silver insults him. Like, dude, like what kind of shit is
like
this?
that, almost every single driver put their cars back on the hauler and left the track, save for 3 holdouts. One, Bobby Isaac, a soft-spoken man who never joined the PDA just because he didn't like the idea of anybody speaking on his behalf. 2, a non-PDA driver named Jim Vandiver driving a car owned by Ray Fox. And 3, a young up-and-comer named Richard Brickhouse. Richard made his very first NASCAR top division start ever just last year at Rockingham. And despite that being his first race on a paved track, he finished 4th. Brickhouse is a PDA driver and plans to walk. but the Dodge factory team pulls him aside and offers him a new ride, the brand new Dodge Charger Daytona, a winged supercar supposedly capable of speeds exceeding 200 miles an hour. But this weekend it won't happen. The tires just can't take it. Brickhouse agrees to the deal and turns scab, leaving the PDA that afternoon. So there it is, a 500-mile race at a 2.66-mile track with just 3 cars in the mix. Bill France offers fans
3
a special
cars.
deal. If you buy a ticket for the inaugural race at Talladega, you can use that stub to get into the Daytona 500 next year. With a 2-for-1 special that good, people turned out in droves to watch the shit show down in Alabama. But Big Bill has one more trick up his sleeve to make the race just a little less ridiculous. He poaches drivers from the preliminary race on Saturday, the Grand American Series, who race smaller pony cars on the infield road course, not the big track. Instead of Chargers, Chevelles, Torinos, and Roadrunners, they race Camaros, Mustangs, Darts, and even one AMC Javelin. These cars were never intended to drive on a track this big, and they can barely do 160 miles an hour with the wind at their backs. Not to mention, there's no way they could pass tech inspection. These are cars from a completely different series. So, Big Bill France calls an audible and just changes the minimum speed requirements and the inspection templates, all with just a simple wave
Just change the rules and you don't break them.
of the hand. And just in case any driver is thinking of backing out, he offers cash bonuses just to roll off the grid on top of the already stated winnings purse. But with so much tension looming in the air over this slapdash ramshackle affair of a race, the stage is set for a disaster to occur, and it does, but not in the way anybody expected. That tire issue is resolved at the 11th hour when Goodyear flies in their last Hail Mary, and those tires finally held up. There wasn't a single tire failure that day. No, what did this race in was one of my favorite parts of old NASCAR racing. The scoring error. Electronic transponders and timing and scoring didn't exist yet, so officials would move placards around on a desk to keep track of all the cars. If the officials agreed on the running order, then it was final. But every once in a while, they'd get it wrong. Well, that happened in this race. That's right, with only 3 cars even being competitive, NASCAR still lost track of Jim Vandiver and Richard Brickhouse, the 2 guys competing for the lead. Bobby Isaac was taking it easy, just worrying about finishing so he could have some easy points to make a run at the championship with all of his competition sitting at home. Richard Brickhouse is declared the winner by a NASCAR official.
Goddamn.
Jim Vandiver and his car owner Ray Foster.
This guy's drowning in the poon. Okay, hold up. Celebrating thinking that they won the race.
Won. And even the radio call with 2-time Cup Series champion Ned Jarrett in the booth thought Jim Vandiver was in the lead. And I think it's worth noting that Jim was driving the older model of Dodge Charger and was not affiliated with Chrysler Corp. Meanwhile, Brickhouse was driving the Dodge factory entry, and it was the first race ever for their new winged wonder car. Rumors persist that the scoring error was not an accident, and Chrysler executives sweet-talked Bill France into manipulating the finish of the race. After all, they kept some of the intrigue for the event by making a big deal about their new car. A lot of people in attendance bought a ticket just because they wanted to see that new Daytona rip around the track at nearly 200 miles an hour. Richard Brickhouse's win stands, and he is absolutely elated with his first career Cup Series win, and is so sure that he'll be tapped to drive the car full-time next year that he uses his winnings to buy a brand new airplane for himself. But unfortunately, he never got the call from Chrysler or
An airplane for himself?
In a year's time, he was semi-retired and only racing a few times per year. So there it was, a disaster of a race made up mostly of field fillers, a tire scandal resolved at the last possible second, a brand new supercar that nobody got to see the full potential of, and of those 2 competitive cars out there on the track, they were driven by 2 guys nobody had ever heard of, and we're not even sure which one of them actually won the race. If this isn't the worst...
Yeah, it's a great first race for your new track, man. I don't understand how you get it wrong. If they're literally the top 2 guys, how you mess that up. Like, I don't understand.
race in NASCAR history, then I really don't know what would be.
So ends the tale of NASCAR's most disastrous inaugural race, and so begins the tale of the Talladega curse. Over the next half-century, Talladega Superspeedway would play host to some of the strangest, unexplainable, and harrowing occurrences to ever afflict the sport of stock car racing. The earliest races at the track are possibly the most mysterious. They existed in a time before NASCAR was frequently televised, and most of the footage from this era is either missing or not publicly available.
Lost
For
media.
many incidents during this time, only the stories remain, leaving the rest up to our imagination. The Talladega woes would continue in 1973, which may have been the most tumultuous single year in the history of the track. That year's Winston 500 earned the dubious distinction as the only race in NASCAR's modern era to start with a field of 60 cars, a decision that would immediately backfire on the 9th lap when one car blew an engine and spilled a trail of oil in front of the supersized field. Drivers
Ooh.
were instantly sent spinning across the infield grass, kicking up a cloud of smoke and dust that made many wrecked cars impossible to see. When the dust settled, 23 drivers had piled into the wreckage, and the Talladega backstretch.
And these crashes at this time, I'm sure, were way, 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 way more dangerous. Safety equipment in the 60s, 70s, definitely not all that great.
Now resembled the set of a Mad Max film. Multiple drivers suffered severe injuries, including longtime driver Wendell Scott, who was so badly wounded that he was practically forced into retirement. It was an outright miracle that no one died that day. The
Well,
following
shit.
race at Talladega would not be so fortunate.
Oh, no.
Just 3 months later, teams and drivers would have to pick up the pieces and run it back in the Talladega 500. On lap 13, defending Rookie of the Year Larry Smith struck the turn 1 wall in a single-car incident. Hours later, fans and crew members were shocked to discover that Smith had tragically become Talladega's first fatality. Commentator Ken Squire was perplexed as the accident looked nowhere close to deadly. Smith's fatality was unbeknownst to competitors.
Sometimes you just hit a very specific point, and stuff happens like that. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong in this, I'm pretty sure Dale Earnhardt was actually the last person to die in a NASCAR race, because they've jumped up the safety things so much that no one's died since Dale Earnhardt. I'm pretty sure that's true. If it's not, then inform me, but I'm pretty sure I read that's true, so that really shows how much safer they've gotten, especially compared to this time, where an accident that doesn't even look that bad can end up, being fatal.
Bobby Isaac, who would go on to do something even more inexplicable later in the day. Midway through the race, the 1970 champion would impulsively pull his car into the pits. It was at that moment, in the middle of the race, that Bobby Isaac decided to retire from full-time racing.
What?
Media outlets at the time reported that Isaac heard a voice in his head which told him to stop racing immediately. After missing the rest of the 1970...
What? Yeah, okay, this is in one race? Holy shit, what? Yeah, I can definitely see how people think this track is all types of cursed and stuff. I mean, dude was in a race, decides... comes for a stop and decides, you know what, I'm retiring from racing in the middle of this race, after hearing a voice in his head telling him to stop. Maybe it was the voice of that fucking Native American dude. Maybe it was the guy who cursed him. He was in his voice held telling him, man, you gotta stop, man, or you're gonna become part of the curse. That's insanely strange.
3 season, Isaac would periodically return to the track for a handful of races per year. In 1977, the 45-year-old driver collapsed while exiting his race car and would be pronounced dead the next day from cardiac arrest in his head, which told him to stop racing immediately. After missing the rest of the 1973 season, Isaac would periodically return to the track for a handful of races per year. In 1977, the 45-year-old driver collapsed while exiting his race car and would be pronounced dead the next day from cardiac arrest. At the time, Isaac...
I guess the curse got him in the end. Holy shit, dude. Just delayed it a little bit there by retiring in the middle of the race.
held the NASCAR record for the fastest lap at Talladega, which he set in 1970. In 1975, racing legend Mark Donohue ran a time trial lap at Talladega with an average speed of 221 miles per hour, setting a closed-circuit world record. Days later, Donohue was fatally wounded from a crash while practicing for the Austrian Grand Prix. On nearly the same day as Donohue's accident,
Holy shit.
beloved NASCAR driver Tiny Lund was struck and killed after another car collided with his driver's side door on the Talladega backstretch.
Holy fuck, man. We just started kind of in this video. We're 12 minutes into this hour-long video, and we've got so many deaths already. I didn't expect... I was expecting crashes and stuff. I didn't expect to have this much deaths already. We had dude dying in the... two dudes dying from crashes in the race. Dude getting the record, then dying in another crash a few days later. And then guy retiring in the middle of the race, and then dying when he gets out of his car. I mean... yeah, it's insane.
In less than a decade of operation, Talladega Superspeedway had already been directly or indirectly linked to the deaths of 4 drivers. However, following the death of Tiny Lund, the Speedway spirits will look more kindly on the track's active competitors.
Okay,
To
thank
this
God.
day, Tiny Lund remains the last driver to lose his life in a NASCAR race at Talladega. While drivers would remarkably be spared on the track, there were never any guarantees inside of it. During the 1975 Winston 500, Richard Petty's car caught fire in the pits. As Petty's brother-in-law Randy Owens rushed to douse the flames with a fire hose, the nearby pressurized water tank exploded, launching Owens 15 feet in the air and killing him instantly.
What? Well, hold up. I gotta hear this again. What?
There were never any guarantees inside of it. During the 1975 Winston 500, Richard Petty's car caught fire in the pits. As Petty's brother-in-law Randy Owens rushed to douse the flames with a fire hose, the nearby pressurized water tank exploded, launching Owens 15 feet in the air and killing him instantly.
That's insane. Like, what are the odds of, like, not only are people dying in, like, the actual race part of the race, but they're also dying in just random instances. Just, you know, random events that could have happened anywhere, you know? Things that have nothing to do with racing, you know? Because racing kind of has an inherent thing about it, you know? At least at this time, an inherent thing of, you know, there's going to be some fatalities. But, you know, that's just a random event. It just happened to happen.
In
That's insane.
1977, veteran driver David Sisko was competing at Talladega when he was greeted
It's horrifying,
by a terrible
too.
sight in the infield. His mother had been struck and killed by a pickup truck near the garage area.
What?
Sisko was apparently so devastated that he would never attempt another NASCAR race. Unbelievably, this would
understandable.
be the last pickup truck-related death at Talladega.
What?
In 1996, the president of ARCA was T-boned in the parking lot and would later go on to die from his injuries.
So this is insane. Like, you could excuse racing-related deaths, right? As like, oh, you know, it's a racetrack, you know, they have lots of races here to do, and at this time you would expect multiple racers to die at the track. It kind of makes sense. But to also have, like, multiple instances of people just dying in non-racing related incidents, like random people getting hit by trucks, you know, a water tank fucking exploding, launching a dude 20 feet into the air. I mean, like, just having random instances like that combined with the racing incidents, and also just the, you know, non-fatal incidents, you know, just stuff like, you know, like the first race being horrific, and, you know, that curse from the, you know, Native American leader. You know, it really shows, it's really all combining together to make a really interesting story, and it really does seem like it's cursed, with all these stuff. It sounds like more than coincidence here with just how many there fucking are, these random deaths, in this one stadium.
Along with its string of inexplicable tragedy, the early days of Talladega also housed some of the most bizarre mysteries that stock car racing has ever known. On the morning of the 1974 Talladega 500, crew members awoke to an unnerving development. The race cars of nearly a dozen drivers had been sabotaged. Teams inspected their vehicles and discovered
How do you
slashed tires,
sabotage?
cut oil lines, and gas tanks filled with sand. The extent of the sabotage was only fully realized during the race, as many drivers
Is that like, okay, who could have done that? Like, how do you do that without getting noticed for a while? And, like, why are you sabotaging, like, so many cars? Like, is that not at this point where there's not as much safety? That's definitely, like, arguably attempted murder right there. Like, that's insane. What the fuck? Yeah. So many of these instances are not just also just a bunch of, like, you know, bad instances. It's just weird instances. Like, instances you wouldn't expect things to happen like that to happen. Yeah, it's a lot.
began experiencing mechanical failures as soon as they hit the track. Miraculously, no drivers were injured in the fiasco, but sabotaging so many race cars at a track as fast as Talladega was practically attempted mass murder.
Right.
Authorities launched an immediate investigation to find the perpetrator, but were unable to identify even a single suspect.
How do you get away with that? Like, how do you get to the point where you can sabotage all these cars and you can't even, like, do all these shits to these cars and, like, you just get away with it? How does that even happen? What?
Whoever sabotaged the cars did not leave a trace of evidence, and to this day,
Shout out
the
to him, I guess.
Talladega Tamperer remains at large. Following the worst vehicular sabotage in NASCAR history, the track amped up security for future events, and while they succeeded
Makes
in
sense.
keeping future delinquents out of the garage, they didn't think to check whether one could wind up behind the wheel. Prior to the 1982 Winston 500, A few drivers expressed confusion at an unfamiliar name on the entry list for the race. A man by the name of L.W. Wright had purchased a race car for $20,000, which he entered in that week's race at Talladega. Despite claiming to be a seasoned stock car racing veteran, no other driver had ever heard of him. However, in an age
Some random
before
ass guy.
detailed record keeping, it was somewhat plausible that a driver could have honed their skills in some middle of nowhere town. The mysterious driver managed to qualify for the race.
That's so funny to think that you could just get a car and just get yourself in, no experience, just no checking, just just a random ass guy entering a NASCAR race at Talladega, big ass stadium too. That's just hilarious.
Despite wrecking his car on just the second lap around the track.
Dang.
As the crew was repairing the car,
Second
for
lap's
race
crazy.
day, Wright seemed unable to answer basic questions that any driver should have known. Suspicion aside, Wright managed to line up for Sunday's race and take the green flag. Immediately, it was clear that the number 34 Chevrolet was dangerously off the pace. Wright was quickly lapped by the leaders and was ordered by NASCAR to retire from the race.
So L.W. Wright again given the black flag as he passes by us, and Wright has been ordered to the pit area.
After pulling into the pits, Wright got out of his car, slipped into the infield, and was never seen again. It turned out that L.W. Wright was an imposter and had conned investors out of nearly $50,000 so that he could race alongside NASCAR's biggest stars. To this day, the true identity of L.W. Wright remains unknown.
He just disappeared. He just goes random guy gets into a NASCAR race, is forced to quit, gets out, is never seen again. Cons out of $50,000 or something. How does this happen? I don't understand. How are there not 20 checks to make sure that you are able to race in a NASCAR race? What? How does this even come close to happening?
His alias persists as one name in the NASCAR record books that may always be shrouded in mystery.
That's fucking
After letting
hilarious.
what was essentially an average Joe mess around in a sanctioned professional sporting event, NASCAR would tighten up their standards for who exactly was allowed on the track.
Right.
However, while paying more scrutiny to...
They're having to change all the rules of the entire sport because of this damn stadium. Having to change the security rules, having to change the fucking, who can get into the race.
the drivers in the race cars, there was one other car they forgot about.
Uh-oh.
Well, the pace car, we understand, has been stolen. The officials are not driving this thing, and somebody has actually gotten in the pace car and stole it.
At the 1986 win on pit road, he completed a full circuit at over 100 miles per hour.
That's some YouTuber shit. That's some YouTuber shit you go, I managed to steal a NASCAR just so I can go around the track and have some fun. There's no financial incentive. There's no incentive to stealing a car in a NASCAR track other than just having fun and doing a lap just because it's something you could say you did at one point. You can get arrested. Doesn't matter. You could say that you drove a NASCAR in a NASCAR arena. I mean, that's the only motivation to doing that, man. I honestly gotta respect it a little bit. I honestly gotta respect it.
Before the police set up a blockade and took him into custody, during the whole bewildering spectacle, the crowd of 133,000
Cheering him on?
fans cheered wildly.
Of
Growing
course.
up, we're all told
I would
to
cheer for him.
respect the law of the land, but
Hell nah,
sometimes
man.
you just gotta root for the rebel.
Of course, man. That's fucking hilarious.
After the Muskogee Indians were forced to vacate their lands, most obeyed the order and subjected themselves to the infamous Trail of Tears. Some of the natives, however, refused to go west to the Indian Territory and instead chose to keep their destiny in their own hands. A few Muskogee turned their sights instead towards the south, in the mostly uninhabited territory of Florida. The subtropical peninsula had become known as a safe haven for refugees of the expanding American Empire. Together with various other displaced natives and escaped African slaves, the remnants of the Muskogee would integrate into a new tribe, the Seminole. Although they too were forced to abandon their way of life like all the others, at the very least, for the time being, they were free. In 1819, Spain ceded the Florida Territory to the United States, and concerns of relocation immediately returned. Although the Seminole briefly received a reservation on the peninsula, it wouldn't be long until the federal government once again demanded they move out west.
Most successful genocide in history, man.
After already sacrificing so much, the Seminole refused to budge, and after Chief Osceola shot and killed federal agent Wiley Thompson, they found themselves at war with the might of the U.S. military. As the American troops marched into Florida, the Seminole warriors would soon be outnumbered by as much as 10-1. Needless to say, they were heavy underdogs.
Allison is going to make a move. He's going to have to do it now. He cannot do it. Still, Parsons is going to win his first Winston Cup race. There's the checkered flag.
Talladega Superspeedway has always been
A history of
unusually
underdogs?
favorable to underdogs. The relative ease with which drivers can navigate the track opens the door for the occasional David to contend with NASCAR's Goliath. In addition to the fluke win of Richard Brickhouse in the inaugural race, 5 other drivers would score their one and only career victory in the first 20 years of competition at Talladega, by far
Dang.
the most of any track in the sport. In the early days of the track, winning at Talladega was a matter of endurance. Completing 500 miles at the longest circuit in the sport was a daunting task for even the most dominant race teams. Putting yourself in position to win was often as simple as overcoming the attrition of your competitors. Eventually, most teams figured out how to make their machines go the distance, and the name of the game shifted to speed. In spite of its many trials and tribulations, Talladega Superspeedway has always managed to draw in fans for one simple reason. There's no other place on Earth where you can witness so many cars go so fast. The track's
course, man.
33-degree corners allow drivers to maintain incredible momentum throughout the circuit.
Ooh.
Talladega may be the only track in all of racing where you can complete an entire lap without ever touching the brake pedal. The colossal oval
That's
is
sick, man.
capable
That's
of
sick.
producing such extreme
Also, probably some of the reason why there's so many crashes. If we're being real here.
speeds that most motorsports don't feel comfortable racing on it. In 1980, IndyCar had plans for a Talladega race. They would soon scrap the idea forever after it became clear that the cars would be moving so fast that any accident essentially meant certain death. Stock cars are considerably slower than open-wheel cars, but soon enough, they too would begin approaching the danger zone. Bobby Isaac managed to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier as early as 1970, but rule changes to the cars brought speeds down to the 180s for most of the decade. Gradually, though, speeds began to creep back up, and in 1982, Benny Parsons would once again reach 200, becoming the first NASCAR driver to eclipse the mark in a qualifying lap. 1 year later, Cale Yarborough would reach 202, surpassing Bobby Isaac's 13-year-old record. 1985 would mark the arrival of the fastest
I feel like I'm
man
watching
in
a summoning
NASCAR
salt video
history,
right now.
Bill Elliott, who would qualify for the Winston 500 with a monster lap of 209 miles per hour. Elliott's car was so much faster than the competition that after a ruptured oil pump forced him into the pits, Elliott would overcome a 5-mile deficit under green to retake
Holy
the lead
shit.
by the end of the race. Even
That's
after burning
insane.
several minutes on pit road, Elliott had just ran the fastest race in NASCAR history, completing 500 miles in just over 2 hours and 41 minutes. 2 years later, Bill Elliott would complete a 2 2/3 mile lap at Talladega in under 45 seconds, setting an average speed of 212.8 miles per hour. It was at this point that the entire sport of stock car racing would
I feel like this is gonna
discover
lead to
that they had
what, a
ventured too
disaster?
far into unwelcome territory.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Talladega, it means
The more and more you keep trying to push it, man. You keep trying to push these barriers, man. Something's gonna happen that pushes. That's gonna, bring you back to reality. Push you
speed,
back.
it means competition, and speed's certainly something we've seen a lot of this weekend, Larry.
8 drivers exceeded 210 miles per hour.
The identical front row as last year, Bill Elliott on the pole and Bobby Allison alongside.
Bobby Allison spent a brief period as NASCAR's most popular driver, and at Talladega, the Alabama-born racing legend was always a fan favorite. On May 3, 1987, Bobby Allison came inches away from becoming one with the fans.
Oh shit.
Oh, we have a problem. Bobby Allison with a horrible crash here on the front stretch. It has torn out a complete section of protective rail.
Yeah, the ones where they like to go towards like the fans area and like, you know, break like the part where separates the cars from the fans is always super scary to look at, because I always think that there's gonna be like way more injuries because of all the fans getting injured and stuff, you know, which I don't think obviously doesn't happen recently, but I do know back in the day there was one. I think the deadliest car crash in history was like at a NASCAR, well, maybe not NASCAR, but like wasn't it? It might have been a NASCAR race where one of the cars like went into the stands and like, yeah, ended up in a huge tragedy.
After
So I'm always just worried about
failure
that.
sent his car spinning down the tri-oval, Bobby Allison found himself at the center of the most frightening near miss in NASCAR history. The Talladega pace had become so fast that even a slight aberration was enough to transform any of the 40 vehicles.
Yeah, when you're going so fast, it's like you see these multi-ton cars, like they just float in the air, man. They just glide across the track. They're going so fast when they get airborne.
On track into a 2-ton projectile. Just as everyone was starting to forget about the Talladega curse, the track would produce an incident so
That's so
ominous that
scary,
it would
man.
fundamentally alter the future of stock car racing. One may consider it benevolent of the curse to spare everyone on that day, but the story of Talladega's most dangerous...
Is this the one? Is this the accident? I may have seen it in Emplemon's Dale Earnhardt video. Was this the crash that like made NASCAR change the rules where everyone had to go the same speed? Now that they made like they put like, I don't know what they're called, things in the engines to make everyone go the same speed, and Dale Earnhardt didn't like it because it ended up causing more crashes because everyone's going the same speed. All the cars are packed together. I'm pretty sure this is what that happened, because I'm pretty sure I've seen this crash before. It looks familiar.
dangerous race doesn't end here.
And of course, that
Following
also
Bobby Allison-
another time Talladega is changing the rules of the sport. It keeps happening.
spine-chilling accident.
Keeps making
The
NASCAR change
fastest
its
field
rules.
in NASCAR history would be conquered by the heir to the Allison throne, Davey Allison,
Oh shit!
who scored his first career victory on the same day that his father cheated death. 6 years later, fate would repay the favor.
A sad note in
Oh,
sports
no.
today. Stock car racer Davey Allison died this morning.
Helicopter
after the
crash.
helicopter he was piloting crashed yesterday in the infield of the Talladega Speedway down in Alabama.
What? He avoids death. He drives the fastest car. He avoids death at Talladega, and his son wins the race. And then literally, he then goes on to... Wait, no, this is not even Bill Allison. This is Davey Allison. This is the son. Holy shit. Dies in a helicopter crash at Talladega? Like, he just happens to have his helicopter crash at Talladega. Holy shit. Wins the race and then loses his life. It's almost like, yeah... like, the thing with Dale Earnhardt, how he died, like... watching his son at first place, and then he goes on to like to win the Daytona 500 the year after. And then now, like, it's a weird thing with like the father-son thing. Like the dad of this time avoids death, and the son wins the race, but then he goes on to die at the stadium. That's crazy. Like, what are the chances? What are the chances? Another just death that has nothing to do with racing. It just happened to happen at Talladega. That's insane. Helicopter crash. Holy fuck.
Davey Allison, a great champion.
32. Rest in peace, man. That's terrible.
32.
Although his life and career were cut tragically short, Davey Allison's legacy will always be etched in the 1987 Winston 500, possibly the most influential single race in NASCAR history. Bill Elliott would become the last NASCAR driver to ever reach the 212 mark. After this race, super speedways entered the age of the restrictor plate, a new component to the intake manifold designed to limit horsepower and keep speeds under 200 miles per hour. This thin metal plate would completely change the game, and spawn a form of racing so sensationally unique that no other motorsport in the world even comes close to replicating it. Plate racing takes traditional racing technique
where everyone's
and
the same
turns it on its
speed.
head. It's a format that can allow the 30th place car to be within 2 seconds of the leader, featuring lap after lap of 3-wide traffic. Rather than raw driving ability, winning a restrictor plate race relies on the driver's patience, timing, and decision making.
And a part of the strategy, this also causes more crashes, not because everyone's all packed together as well, but also because, to get ahead in this sport, you have to make strategies to get past people, which part of your strategy is going to have to be causing people to crash, you know?
Compared to the spectacular displays of speed in the past, Talladega racing would now resemble a high-velocity game of chess. Restrictor plates would usher in a new era of NASCAR, and along with it, a new era of mayhem.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Not what you want to see
The driver POV perspectives are crazy. Oh my
While
god.
plate racing was intended to make the sport safer, super speedways arguably became more treacherous than ever before. The frequency of wrecks skyrocketed as drivers now had far less margin for error in the close quarters traffic. With so many opportunities for calamity, the drivers would start discovering inconceivable methods to wreck a race car. Talladega had always been a place that pushed the limits of what was possible on a NASCAR track, and the early 90s saw a remarkable string of accidents where drivers would test the literal limits of the track. The 1993 Die Hard 500 was NASCAR's first race at Talladega after the death of Davey Allison. The event would be remembered most for two harrowing incidents. On lap 69, rookie driver Stanley Smith would suffer a head-on collision into the Turn 1 wall. The accident eerily occurred in the same part of the track as Larry Smith's fatal crash almost 20 years to the day after the
Holy
tragedy.
shit.
Stanley Smith would manage to survive, but with catastrophic injuries that would end his racing career entirely. However,
Fractured
despite
skull.
involving a driver nearly losing his life, this accident is most well known for something that had not happened in a NASCAR race in a quarter century.
There is one car that has gone over the wall, as you see in that. I can't remember the last time
I've
we
never
saw a
seen
car on the
this.
speedway, Ned.
What?
No, I can't either.
Jimmy Horton's number 32 Chevy had left the racetrack. The accident compelled
I've never seen
NASCAR
this.
to install
Holy
a
shit.
catch fence in the Talladega corners. The new enclosure would come in handy just 3 years later, as it prevented Ricky Craven's car from also exiting the circuit in a similar crash.
I'm
However,
telling you, with
back
the
in
speeds, bro, the cars, they just fly when they get airborne, man. Like, when they're in the air, they're in the air, man. It's
93
insane.
Die Hard 500, the mayhem was only half over. On lap 132, Neil Bonnet's car was sent tumbling into the tri-oval catch fence. Thankfully, after Bobby Allison's accident, NASCAR had strongly reinforced the line between the spectators and the
Yeah,
action,
it looked a lot
narrowly
stronger.
escaping yet another tragedy. While it came
But
very
both of those happened in the
close,
same
this
race is
Die Hard
nuts.
500 did not live up to its moniker. The event would go on to be remembered as the race where cars seemingly refused to stay inside the track. The next time the Cup Series returned to Talladega, Mark Martin would discover the true meaning of going inside the track.
Ooh.
Once again, NASCAR would have to make some modifications. Talladega has the strange ability to send cars in seemingly any direction. In a few cases, that direction would be up.
Is he going to win the Winston 500? They come through the tri-oval. Checkered is waving. Ernie Irvin wins and Rusty spins and gets airborne.
The blowover
Oh my
is one
God.
of the most ethereal moments that any racing fan can witness. We all know cars as some of the heaviest objects we interact with on a regular basis. Most of us would have to use all of our strength to get them to budge a single inch.
Seeing
And
them
to think
fly
that
is
something
just
as light as
amazing.
air could be powerful enough to lift a 2-ton machine off the earth. Well, you just have to see it to believe it. At the speeds NASCAR drivers travel at Talladega,
Oh.
it happens more often than you guess.
Well, Darrell, a 737 will, of course, it's designed to take off, but it will take off at, what, 160 some miles an hour. These cars are running 185, and the roof flaps do their job to keep that car from getting way up in the air. Wow.
These angles are great.
In 1996, the Talladega curse finally caught up to Bill Elliott, who suffered a broken leg after his car soared across the backstretch
Ooh.
grass. But the most spectacular blowover
Those
in
people looked way
Talladega
too
history
close.
belongs to a different Elliott.
Uh-oh, trouble. Elliott Sadler over once and a half and on his roof.
In 2003, Elliott Sadler would get over a full second of airtime as his car executed a near-flawless pirouette. The number 38 M&M's Ford must have covered the length of a football field without touching the ground.
That's
The following
insane.
season, Sadler returned to Talladega and inexplicably
Again!
became the only driver in history to blow over at the same track 2 years in a row, this time finishing the race in style.
He said he wanted to finish
He must.
this race with all 4 tires on the ground. He did.
Hey,
But he just
it
didn't
worked
keep
out.
him there the whole time.
Yeah, if anything, just you know, saved him some gas, maybe. I don't know.
It's one thing to watch a blowover as a spectator, but to experience one from inside a race car is a sensation most of us can only imagine. A NASCAR
Would not want to
engine
feel
can
it.
roar as loud as 140 decibels, but in an airborne
That's
car,
loud, bro.
many
Goddamn.
drivers report a brief moment when everything falls silent. At the instant in which the mighty racing machine
That's
is
horrifying.
briefly wrestled away from the dominion of gravity, it's as if the driver has entered the window to another realm. Do you think that if they listened hard enough, they would hear the faint thumping of horses galloping on the Alabama clay? Of course, in moments like these, most drivers have other things to worry about.
Oh, goes the 18. The 62.
He landed it.
Ever since Bob
Flipping and
Allison's
landing it is so
accident,
cool.
NASCAR has been continually trying to eliminate the blowover, but try as they might, Talladega has always found a way to send cars flying.
Oh, Logano gets turned. Logano is upside down.
While more blowovers happen at Talladega than anywhere else, the track's most iconic accidents are of a far different breed. Ever since restrictor plates introduced the age of pack racing, there's been a monster lurking in every superspeedway race. It's the reason why most drivers, teams, and owners dread Talladega Sunday.
Ruh-roh.
Uh-oh, Kyle caught up the field. Accordion's back.
Whoa, man.
Trouble. Stewart in the wall.
Here we go. Here we go.
Robbie Gordonson at the 33. Harvick is around.
Here we
See,
go.
all yeah, dude, with these with they're so packed together, man. One car crashes, it causes a fucking 50-car pileup. Look at this. This is
Call it
mayhem.
The big one, a massive pileup that can wipe out more than a dozen cars in the blink of an eye. Talladega may have the most room of any NASCAR track, but when the big one strikes, drivers often find themselves with nowhere to go. It can happen anywhere at any time. All it takes is for one driver to make one mistake. It's as simple as someone mistiming a block, sticking their nose in a gap too small, or inexplicably rejoining the pack at half speed. Whatever the cause,
One mistake.
the outcome remains the same. Multiple drivers' days are ended by something they had no way of preventing. Modern-day NASCAR fields race with around 40 cars. Throughout the 90s, it was not uncommon for the big one to involve 10 or more cars, about a quarter of the field. By the 2000s, the accidents started to become truly enormous. The 2002, 2003, and 2005 Talladega spring races each saw a pileup involving more than 20 drivers, with the 03 race
Half the fucking
Cup
race.
Series record 27 cars. However, the largest wreck in modern
Nearly
NASCAR
three
history
quarters of the
happened at
race.
a Talladega race in what is now the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The division is essentially NASCAR's minor league, and in the 2002 Aaron's 312, inexperience would contribute to the mother of all pileups. On lap 14, Johnny Sauter's blue Chevy slid sideways and started tumbling in front of the entire field. Drivers began swerving into each other to avoid the carnage and quickly block the track. When it was all said and done, 31 cars were collected, nearly 3/4 of the entire field. Out of the few survivors, most would fall off the pace with mechanical issues. The race eventually boiled down to just 2 competitive cars.
Two.
A scenario that may never occur in another NASCAR race.
That's hilarious.
While Talladega races have increasingly turned into wreckfests, it's curious to consider that when it so desires, NASCAR's most feared track is capable of leaving everyone unscathed. The 1997 Winston 500 was the first race in Talladega history to run caution-free. After crashing into the infield just 3
First
years
ever.
prior,
It's been like
Mark
50
Martin
years.
would break Bill Elliott's record for the fastest
Like 30 years,
NASCAR
sorry.
race, completing 500 miles in 2 hours and 39 minutes. In the following 5 seasons, 2 more Talladega races would run caution-free. As of now, it's the last track in NASCAR history to ever achieve this feat. It really
That's
makes
insane.
you wonder, does Talladega create the mayhem, or do we?
We saw a lot of communication on that restart, that first initial
Is it like a
start,
self-fulfilling
but
prophecy to like people know about the Talladega curse and they get all nervous and stuff and it causes more crashes maybe or something? I don't know.
all working together to get in line on the front. You see them. They're pulling away, Jeff.
Let's show you how far this first group of Stewart Haas Racing has driven away.
When everyone chooses to cooperate, we are capable of achieving remarkable things. In an ideal world, we could do anything caution-free. But there's a reason why idealism is so hopelessly fragile. While it takes everyone to avoid destruction, it only takes one to create it. As is the case with most things in America, the best you can do is survive.
What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming.
How is it that when we find ourselves in the biggest place we've ever known, we still run out of room? Americans have always been infatuated with...
Emplemon be hitting us with these lines, man. He has a video about NASCAR, and he's with these insane lines that are making you think, you know, about the first one he said, how it takes everyone to avoid destruction, only one to cause it. And now that it says how in the biggest place you ever known that you still run out of room. It's insane. Yeah, it's just, yeah, great lines about, like, greed and how easy things to destroy things, and, you know, how easy it is to ruin things compared to how much it is to, you know, create great things.
How is it that when we find ourselves in the biggest place we've ever known, we still run out of room? Americans have always been infatuated with the concept of manifest destiny, the 19th century ideal that the United States should inevitably span from sea to shining sea. This grand vision of America was eventually realized at tremendous expense to those who originally...
Well, yeah, it was colonization.
Even now, as we sit atop our New York skyscrapers and California mansions, manifest destiny is still very much alive. We apply it to what we wear, what we drive, how we conduct business. Enough is never enough. We are always marching forward to some glorious, indeterminate outcome. Why stop at building the biggest racetrack in the world when you can build one even bigger, steeper, wider, and faster? Our conquest for more never ends. Some call
never
it
satisfied.
Others call it destiny. The driver's strike at Talladega's inaugural contest gave many others a unique opportunity to race in the Cup Series. One of those newcomers was a 23-year-old Richard Childress, who would use the prize money from his big break to open up his own racing team. In 1981, Childress retired from racing and handed over the reins of his number 3 car to NASCAR's newest champion, a driver by the name of Dale Earnhardt.
Here he is. He's arrived.
With Richard Childress Racing, Earnhardt would go on to win 6 of his 7 Cup championships, and the Childress number 3 would become the most iconic stock car of the 20th century. Earnhardt's career will always be most intertwined with Daytona, but one of his most impressive feats was coming the closest of anyone to conquering Talladega. Despite hating restrictor plate racing more so than any other driver, Earnhardt was undeniably the best at it. He was so skilled at drafting that some competitors swore that he could literally see the air coming off the cars. In October 2000, Talladega would be the site of his final career victory. In possibly the most impressive display of racing mastery the sport had ever seen, Earnhardt would charge from 17th to 1st in the final laps to become a 10-time
17th to 1st, holy shit.
The most of any driver. He may have won even more.
And of course the GOAT at Talladega, you know, has to be cursed eventually, you know, maybe not at Talladega, but he eventually did get cursed, I guess, so.
You know what tends to happen when someone comes close to conquering Talladega.
Right.
This is undoubtedly one of the toughest announcements that I've ever personally had to make.
Can't conquer Talladega, man. It's impossible.
After the accident and turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
The white flag is up. Final lap at Talladega. Who's it going to be? Labonte, Earnhardt Jr., Stewart, or maybe somebody out of the back? Look at this move by Jr. at the white flag.
After suffering such terrible loss, the Talladega spirits would shine favorably on Dale Earnhardt Jr., who would immediately carry on his father's legacy. 1 year after Dale Sr.'s final victory,
that's just great to see, man.
Dale Jr. would score his first Talladega victory, one of 4 wins in a row at the track for the new Pied Piper of superspeedway racing.
Well, that's insane.
Dale Jr.'s remarkable success on NASCAR's biggest stage would make him an instant fan favorite. The newest racing superstar would carry both Talladega and the sport into its present-day incarnation.
Hey, Ricky, Bobby. Good to see you again.
Thanks, man.
You still owe me that $30.
Oh, no, man. You said that was a gift.
You're a dirty liar.
By now, Talladega had become so infamous in pop culture that someone was bound to make a movie about it. 2006 saw the release of the Will Ferrell comedy Talladega Nights, a film that features a winless driver growing resentful of his more successful teammate. Strangely enough, in NASCAR's first race at Talladega after the film's release, a near-identical storyline would play out in reality.
Art predicts reality, man. Art predicts reality.
Brian Vickers is leading with just 15 laps to go and has a chance to score his first career victory in the biggest race of the year. Unfortunately for Brian, his teammate Jimmy Johnson passes him and goes on to win instead. 2 months later at the spring Talladega race, Vickers once again has an opportunity to get his first win.
Oh no.
Will Vickers be the good soldier and follow Jeff Gordon home, or does he want his first win that bad? He's got to get his first win.
He takes the lead with just 2 laps to go, only to get passed once again by Jimmy Johnson.
Oh no.
Later in the year, the Hendrick teammates returned to Talladega to find themselves nose to tail behind Dale Jr. in the closing laps. Both Johnson and Jr. are in a tight championship battle, and it's up to Vickers to help his teammate complete the pass for the win. What happened next wasn't exactly a shake and bake.
Oh! That was very intentional, man. That was very intentional.
Talladega has always been known for its sensational.
Play that shit back, man. That's just funny, man. Dude, I love when you can see emotion. Like, obviously, you can't see their faces or anything. You just see the cars. When you can see emotion and a clear intent with just, like, them in the cars, it's so funny. Look at this.
Complete the pass for the win. What happened next wasn't exactly a shake and bake.
He's like, fuck you.
Talladega has always been known for its sensational finishes. Since 1980, about a third of all Talladega races have ended in a last lap pass. Such a scenario is portrayed to great effect in Talladega Nights, which makes use of the track's most distinct feature. While most tracks are designed with the finish line in the center of the front straightaway, Talladega's is about 1,000 feet farther down the track towards the entrance of Turn 1. While it may seem like a small alteration, this unique design aspect has affected the outcomes of countless races. It's amazing what can happen if you leave someone with just a little more room to run. The name Seminole can be traced back to the Spanish words.
I like that he keeps bringing it back to the origins here.
They were a tribe composed of wildly different people who all shared a single unifying vision, a refusal to be conquered. The Seminole warriors fought valiantly. They pushed the U.S. military to the most challenging and expensive conflict with any indigenous group in the nation's history. However, eventually, the Seminole losses had become catastrophic, and they simply couldn't outlast the overwhelming resources of the United States. One by one, the Seminole chiefs were captured and forced to surrender. By 1843, nearly the entire Seminole tribe were forcibly relocated to the Creek Reservation in Oklahoma. Only a small fraction managed to evade government capture by fleeing into the Everglades, a vast stretch of swampy wilderness considered by American settlers to be inhospitable. After nearly a decade of costly fighting, the military decided that further pursuit was no longer worth the trouble. By the end of the war, as few as 100 Seminoles remained, the last of the
That's insane.
Throughout the rest
That's
of
such,
the
yeah,
19th
what they say,
all of the other
most successful
indigenous
genocide in
people
history.
America would be forced to submit to government rule. Eventually, the Everglades Seminoles would remain as the last free tribe within U.S. territory. Despite all of their power and might, America could never conquer the Seminole people. There are some things in this world that you simply cannot control.
Some things you just can't conquer, man. Some things you just can't conquer.
Since its very first race, NASCAR has always struggled to control Talladega. The track has served as the ultimate fulcrum for the sport's greatest conflict of interest. By creating the world's most spectacular track, they simultaneously created the world's most dangerous track. NASCAR has always straddled the fine line between entertainment and safety.
Yin and
Throughout
yang.
the history of the track, The sanctioning body has been in a constant balancing act in trying to prevent the next Talladega catastrophe while maintaining the track's unique appeal. The continual addition of rules and regulations has resulted in a style of racing that looks completely unrecognizable to the sport's humble beginnings.
And I mean, guys were slamming into one another, they're hitting each other in the corner. Eventually, just what happened is going to happen. It's going to happen again, too, probably before the day's over.
Many drivers today feel that Talladega racing is a glorified crapshoot, which is somewhat emblematic of modern NASCAR as a whole.
You know, look, these championships aren't like winning like Petty and Earnhardt used to win them. And, you know, it comes down to one race, and it came down to one race for us tonight and came up short.
How far are we willing to compromise the merit of competition to manufacture a more entertaining spectator product? NASCAR is always trying to tweak the sport to make races more exciting. But there comes a point where all the micromanagement becomes counterproductive.
It's idiotic to be out here doing this anyway. Trying to put on some cute show for whatever the hell this is. It's stupid. There's no sense in doing this.
One of the most defining aspects of present-day Talladega has been the looming threat of controversy, where NASCAR's contrived bureaucracy ends up spoiling the race itself. In 2003, NASCAR would end its policy of allowing drivers to race back to the caution flag, as the practice was becoming too dangerous. Instead, the field would be frozen at the moment of caution, a change that would reach a breaking point the next spring at Talladega. When the caution came out with 5 laps to go, fans were thrilled as Dale Jr. appeared to make the pass for the lead. However, the lead was instead awarded to Jeff Gordon, as he was slightly ahead at the exact moment of caution. The race would not be restarted as Gordon would coast to a very unpopular win, as frustrated fans pelted the track with debris.
Oh shit.
NASCAR would later institute the green-white checker rule to minimize the chances of races ending under caution, a policy that has since undergone numerous confusing and inconsistent changes over the years. One of the most baffling officiating decisions for any NASCAR finish happened at the 2016 Xfinity Series race at Talladega. At first, it looked to be an amazing...
Honestly feel like NASCAR, from everything I've heard from the Emplemon videos, just seems like they add too much new shit, too much rules and shit. Like, bro, it's a race. Just let them race, man. Like, if they crash, they crash. It's part of the game, buddy. Make sure they're safe so no one dies or anything or gets injured, but, like, it's a race. Let them race. Come on now, what are we doing?
Feel-good story with underdog driver Brennan Poole threading the needle.
There shouldn't be officiating that much, really, at all, in fucking a race.
To score his first NASCAR win. However, in
I don't feel anyway.
unprecedented reversal, NASCAR would award the victory instead to Elliott Sadler. The officials had bizarrely frozen the field less than 1,000 feet from the finish line, and in that instant, Sadler's car was briefly in the lead, despite being in the process of crashing. To this day, Brennan Poole is still searching for his first win.
That's insane.
By that much, Elliott Sadler, a winner over Brennan Poole at Talladega.
Not even NASCAR's biggest stars can avoid the jinx of Talladega controversy.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. looking for his 5th win at Talladega.
Later in the 04 season, Dale Jr. would avenge his dubious runner-up finish by winning the fall Talladega race, only to once again wind up at odds with the sanctioning body. In his victory lane interview, Jr. would drop an expletive on live TV.
What does it mean to win here, not only once, but to win here 5 times?
Well, it don't mean shit right now. Daddy's done won here 10 times, so...
A mistake that would normally be a non-issue, but it just so happened that
just find him some money, man.
Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl, and networks at the time were hyper-vigilant at maintaining their standards and practices. As a result, Jr. would be docked 25 driver points, which knocked him out of the championship lead.
Why? Why would you do that for, like, why would you not just, like, fine him some money? Why would you fine him for, like, actual, like, things in the sport? That's for... Oh my god, this is making me mad, dude. As someone who doesn't watch NASCAR, like, this videos are just making me mad at the NASCAR sanctioning bodies, the guys up top, man. Because holy fuck, this is actually ridiculous. What the fuck are you on about?
2004 was the best season of Jr.'s
That's ridiculous.
Career, and he may very well have won.
Like, imagine if, like, Jason Tatum goes on, he wins the championship, then he says a curse word, and they're like, actually, no, take it back. You don't get the ring. I'm sorry.
The title if all of us weren't so sensitive over a 4-letter word.
So the chase for the championship is over, and here's how it ended up.
2004 also marked the beginning of NASCAR's chase for the Cup, which eventually morphed into what we now know as the controversial NASCAR playoffs. The 2014-16 incarnation of the playoffs was very likely the most busted and unfair championship format in the history of motorsports. In October 2015, the system would be painfully exposed at where else but Talladega. This era decided
Of course.
to make Talladega.
All the issues in the sport are always exposed at Talladega. That's where they always get exposed.
Cutoff race for the next round, meaning that some drivers would be forced to do whatever they could to avoid elimination. On the final restart, Kevin Harvick has a serious mechanical issue. He can barely keep up at pace car speed and is practically guaranteed to get eliminated unless he does something dire. So, with no other conceivable way to save his season, Harvick swerves into the car beside him and causes a 10-car pileup. The caution comes out, Harvick coasts to the finish line and advances to the next round in quite possibly the worst NASCAR finish in the past decade.
You can hardly blame a guy for doing it. He's either going to make it if he does that.
Hey, I mean, I gotta respect the strategy, though. I gotta respect the strategy.
Green for 2 laps, but I don't know. It just feels like we kind of lost control on this situation.
You know, look, these championships aren't like winning like Petty and Earnhardt used to win them.
Modern day NASCAR is always throwing curveballs, and drivers will adapt to do whatever gets them closer to winning. One of the most peculiar changes in superspeedway strategy was the brief rise of tandem drafting. Following the release of NASCAR's Car of Tomorrow, drivers began to realize that the flat-nosed design allowed the cars to lock bumpers at tracks like Talladega and gain an extra boost in speed. The tandem era would
just ride someone.
2010 Aaron's 499,
get towed.
A race that saw a record 88 lead changes. By the next season,
Holy
drivers
shit.
had mastered the tandem, leading to one of the most unbelievable finishes of all time.
He's got room. They're 3 wide. 3 by 3 to the line. Johnson.
Literally all pass at the same time. Some Noah Lyle shit right there.
Under a blanket, Jimmy Johnson would edge out the win by 2 1/1000ths of a second, tied for the closest finish in NASCAR.
Holy fuck.
However,
yeah, it's like that Jerry Seinfeld joke, whatever it was, of you know, final finishes. It's always like those, like the two racers. It's always like best in the world, never heard of him.
During its brief stint, a departure from what audiences were used to, and NASCAR would eliminate the strategy in the following season. While tandem drafting was relatively unpopular in its
this, man.
Many fans today look back on the era fondly. What has never been viewed fondly is the single most despised policy that NASCAR has ever implemented, the yellow line rule.
Kenny, I hate to deliver bad news, but they're telling me that they're going to drop you back to 21st for dropping under the yellow line. I went underneath Sterling, right? I was underneath him. He turned left. What the hell was I going to do? He run me in the yellow line. So I finished 5th today. I know that. So hell, whatever the hell they want to do.
The death of Dale Earnhardt convinced NASCAR to implement a variety of new safety measures. Most of these ended up being extremely beneficial, but one change, the yellow line rule, has plagued superspeedway races ever since. In an attempt
there's too many rules, man. Too many rules.
NASCAR started penalizing drivers for passing on the apron of the straightaways, which they now marked as out of bounds with a double yellow line. Despite their good intentions, this change was a prime example of NASCAR trying to outsmart the room by adding a needlessly complicated judgment call to what was a self-policing issue.
Here comes Junior, he's got to run. Kenseth tried to close him off. It's going to be borderline, guys. It's going to be borderline.
Boy, I don't know. That was
See, that's dumb. What he just did there didn't really, affect anyone. Like that had no, that had no risk of like causing a big crash or anything. That was just him kind of passing around, and and now he's gonna get penalized for that for doing fucking nothing. Yeah, so that's an insanely dumb rule right there, to penalize anyone, even if they didn't have any risk of causing a crash or anything.
I don't know what we're going to see here. It would be very unpopular to black flagging.
In 2003, Dale Jr. was not penalized on this pass for the win.
Okay.
5 years later, Regan Smith would not be so fortunate after he was forced below the line while passing Tony Stewart for the win.
They are saying Tony Stewart has won the race. Tony Stewart
is the official winner here at Talladega. They would not allow that pass below the yellow line.
That's what I was going with. I got forced down.
See, that's dumb. Yeah, he's not doing anything to cause a crash there. He's just passing him. It's just the more track. He's just passing him, man. That's dumb.
The whole field, and I guess that would have been a cooler finish. I don't know, but I always got told that the rule is if you get forced down there, then you're the winner of the race.
Even as recently as last year, NASCAR still has seemingly no idea how to actually enforce the rule, as Denny Hamlin went way.
There's nothing more annoying than a rule that's inconsistently enforced, because even if a rule's dumb, if it's consistent across the board, it's like, okay, fine, I guess. But if it's like inconsistent on how they call it, it's just so dumb.
Below the line on this pass for the win and wasn't penalized.
He went way before yeah, he went way past it compared to fucking the last guy.
Since its inception, countless great moments have been tainted by the perpetual asterisk which the yellow line rule creates. And the worst part is, there's no evidence to suggest that the rule has had any effect on its intended purpose of preventing accidents. If anything, the rule has contributed to an increase in accidents, as it
because they're closer together.
restricts more cars within a narrower space.
Yeah, that's so dumb, man. They keep making rules to, like, they keep making the cars so close together, and that's what's causing the most crashes here.
Yeah, I got a great idea for everybody. How about we just get rid of the yellow line rule? Nobody really wants to see the races come down to these type of decisions, and I don't think it's going to crash more cars than we crashed today.
Recent races at Talladega have been about as close as you can get to a demolition derby. It's not uncommon these days for a race to end with less than a dozen cars limping across the finish line. Over the past 2 decades, NASCAR has made incredible strides in safety, an unintended consequence of which was ushering in a new generation of drivers who no longer fear accidents. Back in the day, drivers were forced to use restraint on the track because the consequence of wrecking would be potentially...
That is true, yeah. There's a lot more crashes, I feel like, because it's way more fearless driving, because you know there's a little chance of you actually dying in a NASCAR race these days. And these days, you know, dying was an actual very big risk, so people were a lot more cautious back in the day.
Inflicting serious injury on yourself or others. Today, drivers are mostly free to take unthinkable risks on track and walk away from any mayhem completely unharmed. Twice a year now, drivers start a race at Talladega knowing that they most likely won't make it to the finish.
Sorry we couldn't crash more cars today. We didn't fill the quota for today for Talladega and NASCAR. If we haven't crashed at least 50% of the field by the end of the race, we need to extend the race till we at least crash 50% of the cars.
This is Talladega, and this is the Talladega curse. All the way back in 1969, we didn't just construct a racetrack. We constructed a monument to mankind's arrogance. We created something that we can never truly conquer, so that we can spend eternity chasing our endless desire for more. No matter how fast we follow them, all roads at Talladega eventually lead to destruction, misfortune, and controversy.
Yeah, like literally everything at NASCAR that's like gone wrong has like started at Talladega, it feels like here. From what's being said in this video, man, like literally every problem with NASCAR at some point has either had a big example of it, or it like started off the problem being addressed at Talladega.
The state of Alabama carries with it a hauntingly somber past. It has been the epicenter of some of the most unforgivable sins that we as a nation have ever committed. A history that's stained as red as the clay on which it all lies. And unlike clay, the mistakes of our past will never wash out. They follow us as painful echoes from a faraway time that somehow...
Man, yeah, the ending of Emplemon videos are so good too, when he brings it all together for like a message or like a big speech here at the end with these hard-ass quotes. Man, he's just so good at this, man. He's so good at this.
Still too close to us. We can never unhear them, but maybe if we get enough race cars together in one place, we can drown them out, even if it's just for a few hours at a time.
The writer, the Southern writer, William Faulkner once put it, "Between grief and nothing, I will take grief."
People
Man,
always ask
this is
me
so
why
cool.
I watch NASCAR, why I enjoy something riddled with so many imperfections. And to that, I simply answer that we can design the perfect race car, but we can never design the perfect driver. Talladega may not be the greatest display of racing, but it is the greatest display of humanity. It's a racetrack where speed, skill, and machinery no longer matter. It's a venue that only seems to grow more prosperous through its legacy of disaster. It's a battleground where the mistakes of the few are destined to end the journeys of the many. The only place in all of racing that produces no winners, only survivors.
Dude, this is so cool, man. He's bringing this all together to make, like, Talladega a symbol of, like, humanity's issues and problems and, like, tribulations throughout history, and putting it into this one racetrack's history. Like, dude, who else could do this, man? This is fucking insane.
I think Kyle's trying to cross the start-finish line, don't you think?
Yeah, I believe he is.
He wants to finish.
He's going to do it.
There it is. All right.
That's just great.
You don't want to be one lap short.
Every year on NASCAR's schedule, there are 2 dates that I never forget to tune in, when America's greatest drivers are confronted with the one track they fear most. In the land that America's native people once called home, 40 race cars are cursed to reenact their story.
That must be at least 30 cars in that wreck. God help all of them, because there's no place to go.
The Seminole bided their time in the Everglades for more than 100 years. They emerged in an America that had grown rich off the lands they had claimed long ago, an America that was now looking to move on from its centuries-long conquest. In 1957, the Seminole tribe was granted federal recognition by the U.S. government, extending them special privileges as a sovereign jurisdiction. By the 1970s, the Seminole had begun using these privileges to host high-stakes bingo halls, which would go on to be the very first Indian casinos. While most
There's actually quite a bit of like Indian casinos there on, like, the Indian reservations, because they don't fully abide by the laws of the state. So, like, in Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure is home of, like, the biggest casino in the United States, even though gambling is illegal in Oklahoma. So there's actually quite a bit of those casinos and stuff on, like, the Indian reservations.
The Seminole tribe gradually integrated into modern society, a small part would continue their traditional way of life in the Everglades. This group would go on to form a new tribe, known as the Miccosukee. In 2002, the Miccosukee tribe was looking to advertise their new casino and turn to the world of NASCAR.
Oh
7
my
years
god,
later,
what are the chances?
The Miccosukee car would be the centerpiece of the most unbelievable moment in Talladega history.
What are the chances? Like the ancestor of the tribe that was, like, put out of the area where Talladega was built, where it's named after, and then names a casino, names a company, and now it's gonna be part of a gigantic memorable moment at Talladega. What are the fucking chances? This is literally storyline written. Like, this is insane.
It's April 26, 2009. Americans
Holy
are
fuck, man, this is
reeling
so
from the
good.
struggles of the Great Recession. And on this Sunday afternoon,
That was 3.
a few of them
No, it
turned
was
on
2.
the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega, hoping to witness something incredible. In this race, they see big pileups, close racing, and bizarre oddities that only Talladega can seem to produce.
What?
With just 2 laps left, the audience sees something truly unprecedented. The 99 car of Carl Edwards rockets into the lead and starts pulling away from the pack.
Ooh.
He's being pushed by a car no one has paid any mind to all day, the Miccosukee car.
Getting their
driven by
revenge.
Rookie Brad Keselowski. After 7 years in the sport, the Miccosukee team has never won a Cup Series race.
Oh
Their
my
best
god.
opportunity to do so is now resting on the shoulders of a driver making just his 5th career start. Going into today, there's such long shots to
All
win that
odds.
odds makers didn't even bother listing them.
Dang.
However, with just 1 lap to go, the Miccosukee car has just one driver standing in its way of glory. The tandem are pursued by the Army and National Guard cars, but they're not going to catch him. Keselowski.
Oh my god, they're being trailed by the United States. Like, military cars, like representing the U.S. who kicked out the Native Americans, and now the car of the ancestor of the Native Americans is gonna come here and take over. Oh my god, reclaim Talladega, reconquer it.
He pushes Edwards
Oh my
to the home
god.
stretch. He looks high, then he looks low, as Edwards swerves down to block.
Oh god.
Keselowski is forced all the way down to the double yellow line.
Oh no.
He thinks about what happened to Regan Smith the year prior. He knows that if he goes below that line,
Oh
it's
shit.
game over.
Is he just gonna fucking wreck him to go like, oh, you can't fucking force me out, and then they're gonna win? Oh my god, that would be so
The
cool.
Mikasuki
Please.
car has been forced as far down as it can possibly run. It can go no
Dude, the music is so epic too. Goddamn, this is so edited well.
further. It has been given no choice but to stand its ground.
Can Keselowski try to win it?
I don't think he can step out until he waits till the last.
Goes to the outside. Is Edwards going? Oh, no! He turns it. No! No!
Not again. Not again. They're taking back Talladega, man. Taking back Talladega.
Brad Keselowski won this race.
What a fucking storybook ending, man. The fucking direct line down at the Native Americans representing the car with an epic, you know, fucking fuck you to take out to finally conquer the track back again out of in like an insane underdog scenario that only makes sense when you look at, like, you know, the superstition of it, the curse of cursing everyone else, and then eventually coming back and having this ridiculous underdog winning it, which, of course, they're used to the underdogs winning it and stuff at Talladega. It's insane. Yeah, this is a fucking fantastic storyline ending
Carl
here.
Edwards' car destroyed.
Not sure where Carl's going. Maybe he thinks if he runs
What a fucking ending.
his line, it'll count.
That's what he's doing.
I want to finish the race.
And he did,
Yes,
to
he
a
did.
standing ovation from the crowd. Shades of Ricky Bobby.
He ran to the finish
Funny
line?
thing
That's
about
funny.
NASCAR is that if you watch long enough, everything always comes full circle.
That's fucking amazing. Alright. That's the ending of this video, man. Fantastic video by Emplemon. Yeah, just fantastic. He makes such great videos on YouTube, such great documentaries. This was fucking fantastic. Please watch the original video. Get Emplemon the view, please, the watch time, because this is just so great. Yeah, if you want me to watch any more Emplemon videos, suggest them in the comments. I've seen most of them, but I've been refraining off watching his most recent ones. So like the last few videos I haven't watched, so I'm probably gonna get to those because I've been wanting to react to them. That's why I haven't watched the last few. But yeah, any videos similar to this, if you know anyone that makes similar content to Emplemon, I would love to react to them. I have 7 YouTube channels. They're all in the description, so go subscribe to all of them if you want to look at all my content, like the video if you want me to do more, and that'll be about it. Bye.